My dear sisters and brothers, as promised before and always, this minbar is meant to share with all of us what's happening, whether it's good or bad. Sometimes it's happy news, sometimes it's not. And then try to bring it from an Islamic perspective and try to find out how we can deal with that which is new, or that which is current, or that which is impacting our lives. Well, today I will start with two things, I'm sorry to say, both of which are not happy, both of which are bad. But we've got to hear them, and I have to assure you that I investigated to make sure that it is not just another internet blur, but both of them are factual. And I want you to check for yourselves, because both of them impact our lives. And both of them I happen to know about yesterday and the day before. Well, yesterday I read a report that an African country, not a big one, a small country called Angola, banned, and it's the first time in human history, in political existence, Angola banned Islam and declared that the practice of Islam in public will be considered a crime punishable by the law. People are not allowed to practice Islam, and Muslims are not welcome to stay in Angola. Angola is 15 million people in population. Muslims are 90,000 only. Those 90,000, we're told, are not allowed to practice Islam in Angola. And as a symbol to show that the government means what it says, the only masjid in Luanda, the capital, was demolished to the ground. It was removed. Now one will say, but this is a small country in Africa, it means nothing. If we look at it in isolation, we may say that is Angola, very far from us, and this is Canada. But the fact is that what Angola did, many countries, European and Asian, are talking about, and if things start as being talked about, they may find their way to practice. We know what happened in Europe. The Holocaust in the middle of the previous century started by talking. We know what is happening in Myanmar. Don't worry, I'm not talking politics. This is humanitarian perspective of the entire existence of Islam as a deen. Already there are attempts in Canada to make the practice of certain aspects of Islam criminal. 2 weeks ago, a man known to all of us, who's been trying to discredit Islam and Muslims, he ran for a federal office in the last federal elections. This man went to City Hall to campaign to raise the Christian flag on a pole at City Hall. He did not succeed. But he campaigned and he spoke with counselors and asked them not to be ashamed of God, as he said it, not to be ashamed of God, meaning a certain version of what God is for such people. Alhamdulillah, his motion was defeated. But there are moves like that. You know what is happening in Quebec, and it's for another khutbah. So in Angola, things are not isolated. Let me now go to the second thing, which is bad. And that thing, a poll, you know, a survey of people in Canada that was done October 3rd, but I read it yesterday, declared that from 2009 until 2013, a poll of Canadians in general showed an 8% increase in the percentage of Canadians who do not like Islam or Muslims. In 2009, the percentage was 46%. Now it stands at 54%. And at the end, they analyzed those numbers and they said that the only religion and religious group in Canada which is disliked by the majority being over 50%, is Islam and Muslims. There are other religious faith traditions that are not liked, and they pointed them. But all of them are under 50%. Actually, the highest one is at 37%. But Muslims stand at 54%. And one would ask the question, how can we consolidate that? Consolidate for people who are not that familiar with the English language, mean how can we explain these things with the ayah from Surah An-Nur after أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وعد الله الذين آمنوا منكم وعملوا الصالحات ليستخلفنهم في الأرض وليمكنن لهم دينهم الذي ارتضى لهم وليبدلنهم من بعد خوفهم أمنا يعبدونني لا يشركون بي شيئا. Let me try to translate. Allah promised, wa'ada, promised. And before I'm talking about a promise by Allah, and in another ayah, وَعَدَ اللَّهِ لَا يُخْلِفُ اللَّهُ وَعْدَهُ. We know that. We know that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a promise, Allah does not break His promise. And in Surah An-Nisa, وَمَنْ أَصْدَقُ مِنَ اللَّهِ حَدِيثًا. Who is more truthful in discourse than Allah? وَكَانَ وَعْدُ اللَّهِ مَفْعُولًا. When a promise is made by Allah, it will come to pass, but we need to consolidate it. I mean, what is happening now? Let me try to translate. I get carried away sometimes with emotion because, the subject matter, even though it could turn emotional, but it requires the utmost in intellectual focus. So let's try to translate. Allah promised those who have genuine faith among you and do good deeds that He is going to establish their representation of Allah on earth. They will be made to represent Allah on earth and the will of Allah on earth as people before them did that representation. And Allah promised that He is going to establish their deen for them globally. The deen, please put this in a special file. We will need it. And that 5 is وَلَيُمَكِّنَنَّ لَهُمْ دِينَهُمْ. It didn't stop there. It says الَّذِي ارْتَضَى لَهُمْ. It's very important to discuss what does it mean الَّذِي ارْتَضَى لَهُمْ. The deen that Allah wanted them to follow. And to replace their insecurity with peace and tranquility and security. Provided, there's a provider here, on condition that they worship me without associating partners with me. There's a condition. If that condition is broken, then the promise will not come to pass. So now we will start to understand this ayah or part of the ayah from Surah An-Nur with what is happening. Now the ayah is saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises that we will be the khala'if of Allah on earth, and we are going to have our deen established everywhere. Well, what we are seeing is that our deen is not being established everywhere. Our deen is being banned. Our deen is being criminalized. Our deen is being declared unacceptable, status non grata. So now we have to ask the questions. So since we do not see the signs of being now all over the earth representing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we do not see that our deen is being firmly established on earth, we don't see that. And we do not see that we are enjoying peace and tranquility. On the contrary, we are living in fear. Then let us analyze the ayah and see what went wrong. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ. There is a minkum. There is a minkum. You know, go to Surah Al-Fath at the end of Surah, the last ayah of Surah Al-Fath. Muhammad Rasulullah وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ. They have certain qualities. But at the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made another promise for those among you, those who claim faith. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ. Minkum. Who are minkum? Those who collectively claim we are among the faithful. We are believers. We are Muslims. No, there's a subgroup. There's a subgroup that really enjoys a genuine faith. The faith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us to follow. وَلَيُمَكِّنَنَّ لَهُمْ دِينَهُمُ الَّذِي ارْتَضَى لَهُمْ. وَلَيُمَكِّنَنَّ لَهُمْ دِينَهُمْ الَّذِي ارْتَضَى لَهُمْ. Now, many people are following a deen they claim to be called al-Islam now. And there are different versions of that. Some say, no, we are right. They are wrong. They are wrong. They are this, they are that. Nobody tolerates anybody anymore. And everybody is accusing everybody that they are wrong. We are right. But let us go back to the sources, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made a promise here and says there's a deen that Allah wanted, that Allah accepted, and we have to go and examine that. So what went wrong? What went wrong? Let me, because the time does not allow us to dwell on this forever. فَاسْتَخْلَفَ مِنْ بَعْدِهِمْ خَلْفٌ أَضَاعُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَاتَّبَعُوا الشَّهَوَاتِ فَسَوْفَ يَلْقَوْنَ غَيًّا. فَخَلَفَ مِنْ بَعْدِهِمْ خَلْفٌ أَضَاعُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَاتَّبَعُوا الشَّهَوَاتِ فَسَوْفَ يَلْقَوْنَ غَيًّا. Now, what happened after the Salaf al-Salih? Just one consideration, a most important consideration. أضاعوا الصلاة. The Mufassirun of the Quran said أضاعوا الصلاة does not mean they abandoned Salat only. أضاعوا الصلاة means they emptied Salat of its purposely placed content. Salat has a content within it. But when we mubayya salat, means that we pray, but we are somewhere else. We are not using that content of salat. Ada'u salat. They did not benefit from their salat. Inna salata tanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkar. When we find, and I know that I mentioned those statistics and they were so upsetting one day after Isha, but they were declared, nevertheless. I will talk about that another time because I'm still investigating. A report that is not confirmed yet, but there's something that says there's no smoke without fire. There's no smoke without fire. It was declared that, according to statistics by Google, the countries that its people seek sexual content on Google, the top 8 countries among the 10 are so-called Muslim countries. And I'm not going to mention any of them, the one that is at the top. But they are Muslim countries seeking sexually explicit content on Google. So we ask, isn't this ada'u salat? Some people come and pray and then they go and they visit improper sites. So where is it that inna salata tanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkar? I will stop here because I want to investigate. But I said, we know that this is existing. That's why I mentioned it is existing. But it is unofficial yet because I want to investigate before I will talk and I will discuss. So the reason that we are living in fear, the reason that our religion is being banned in Angola, and God knows where else it will happen, the reason that we are disliked, I don't want to say the word hated, disliked by 54% of Canadians. Did I say the reason? I should have said the reasons. The reasons. There are so many reasons. Why is it? Why is it that last week one brother, because of the announcement I made about parking in the fire lane, goes to another person and says, brother, you are parked in a way we cannot even leave. That other person almost started a big fight with him. Why? 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 Shouldn't we be more loving towards one another? Why do we do that? We have to start with this inner self, this nafs that we have to conquer before we can show the others that through Islam, the deen that Allah wanted for us, the deen that He wanted us to propagate. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم فيا فوز المستغفرين دعاء الله سبحانه وتعالى. He will accept our dua. Ameen ya Rabbal Alamin. الحمد لله وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. My dear brothers and sisters, I can see on your faces that everyone is upset. I am upset too. But sometimes we need to get upset before we get out of this mess and before we peek through that mess and see the light. You see, last week, if you remember, I talked about moments of pride. It's not all that. But today I'm talking about something that is not very pleasant. And we've got to consider that, and we've got to consider this. We really need to be honest with ourselves. We need to find ways where we can outreach. See, today after Salat, I'm meeting with someone who is not a Muslim who came to the center. She wanted to learn about Islam. She's writing an assignment about Islam and wanted to know Islam from the source. She's coming to the Islamic Center. These are moments of outreach that we should try to expand. Each one of us knows something good to show the others about Islam. You know that book that the old man, Hani Shawshar, spent putting together and working so hard and saying, you know, I am not asking for money to be put in my pocket. We want to use it to put money in the food bank, to show that Muslims are doing something good by spreading the history, the information about the history of Muslims in London, Ontario, and at the same time do something through outreach. Show the others what Muslims can do to help. And what is happening, he's saying, what I know I've written 3 books that continue to be in boxes in my garage. And he's telling me the same thing. He said, these are in boxes. Why can't we? Now, you know what? You know what? Christmas time is coming. You'll say, oh, Baba, no, don't talk about that. No, I'm going to talk about that. Wouldn't it be beautiful if you buy a few of those and, you know, put some chocolate, put something, put this and this and that, and to your neighbor make a gift basket and put this in it and say, this is my gift, so that you will know your Muslim neighbor. We have history in this city, without telling them anything offensive, and have some sweets, some fruit, something, and say, happy holidays. Is it haram? No, it's not haram. That's number 1. Please do that. Please do that. Number 2, there's a huge conference now for many, many years, for more than a decade, being held in Toronto. You know, there are scholars from all over the world. Wouldn't it be nice if you invite a friend of yours, someone you know, who is not a Muslim, and say, I'm going to pay your registration fee, and you go with me. Let us spend a weekend in Toronto, in a relaxed environment, and let us listen, let us see. These are 2 things now that I mentioned, whereby we can reach out to the world and say that we want you to know the real us, so that the number in 4 years from now will go back to 46 and will continue going down until it's eliminated. Before the Angolan experience is repeated somewhere in the world. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وخطايانا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم علمنا من ديننا ما جهلنا وذكرنا منه ما نسينا وكن معنا ولا تكن علينا. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. وأقم الصلاة.